How are you, Ernesto?
Fine, ready to wish you a happy Star Wars day, May the 4th.
May the fourth be with you. It's a joke, isn't it? I like that. That's very
Well, it's
good.
actually the official Star Wars day. That's a great day to start our series Renaissance, and I think there's two ways in how we are thinking on this series. I mean, we are thinking, for me, Renaissance, or I should say Renaissance, or how do you say it?
Renaissance.
Renaissance. Well, actually, it's a Latin word, and it means rebirth. So I would like to see it from the rebirthing kind of way, and you want to see it from the artistic point of way. So, what are your thoughts on that, on the art part?
Well, my thoughts on that, and we'll be talking about it throughout the week, is that you have a massive opportunity when you talk about Renaissance. You talk about changing the way that you look at your own business. And the idea of having the art involvement is because when you start thinking about how your business could be different, you also start thinking about what positions you differently from everybody else. So, for instance, if you're a plumber and what you do basically is fix sinks, and you fix leaks and you put lines in, then that's a pretty standard job. Everyone goes, they study engineering, they study it and so on. But if you really want to stand out differently to everybody, you've got to then become an artist. And in order to become an artist, you have to take a lot of risks. Because art, if you look at the most famous painter of all time, Vincent van Gogh, from your part of the world, from Holland, he died penniless, poor, and he couldn't wear sunglasses because he cut his own ear off. And he was mega depressed, and nobody appreciated just how big and good and fabulous he was. So in order to be a successful artist, you have to take some risks, and you have to separate yourself from the way that people view it. And so the session that I'm going to be talking about today is how to create success for yourself by creating a better future and sacrificing things along the way as well. So I'll be sharing that with people as well. But I think that for me, Renaissance is about creating art in your own business, which is what you're going to need when you come out the other side of a lockdown, which is imminent anyway.
Yeah, you say Renaissance, I say Renaissance. Which one is right? I'm not sure.
Depends where you're from. Depends where you're from. I think in your case, you're right. But in my case, I'm more right.
That's correct. So anyway, this is going to be an interesting week because we are heading for 50 non-stop consecutive episodes. And that's going to be happening on Friday. So make sure that you get it on your agenda. Make sure to watch the show on Friday, because we're going to have a ton of really good guests, and it's going to be a very special show. And Renaissance might be, and we are actually in the point on figuring out how we are going to evolve this show. We promised you that we were going to be right now with you all the way until we were actually out of lockdown. And right now, in several places, we are just getting out of lockdown, which I do not know if it is the right thing. We have some news in Georgia. We have some news in California that it's already going wild. We have no clue what's going to be happening. But the point is, we need to evolve. We have to start already getting prepared, and we have to know what's going to be happening. So, hey, by the way, have you seen what happened in our latest episode?
Yes, I was walking the dogs this morning, as I do every morning, and listening to our podcast. And if you haven't caught our podcast, by the way, every show we've done, we release as a podcast as well. You can get it on all your favorite podcast suppliers, Apple and so forth. So anywhere you'd normally get a podcast from, look for the Toilet Paper Diaries, download it, and it makes great companionship as you walk around and do whatever you do, or if you're potting around inside your house, or you're sat in the bath, or whatever you do when you're on your own. So make sure you listen to that. So I was listening to it this morning and walking the dogs, and I started speaking, and suddenly I started slurring. And I thought, well, maybe what we've done is recorded it with my internet being a little bit dodgy. So I'm going, no, we have... And everyone's going to be listening to it and thinking, if that's a broadcast of Dave, bless Ernesto for having his friend on, because it's quite clear, you know, he's doing some care for the community because that guy isn't all there. And then I realized what had happened was I put the phone in my pocket and I pressed half speed while I was talking. And so it was only when I took it out and sped it up again, I realized what was going wrong. So it makes great companionship. And if you do find that I start not making sense or sounding really boring or weird, it's your phone. It's not me. So get the podcast and check it out.
Yeah, but it was also quite funny because in the previous show we did mention the word Pornhub.
Don't say it. You can't say Pornhub.
You're gonna block us again.
You can't say Pornhub. You can't say crap. You can't say bad words because they block us. So even terms like bollocks, they'll get blocked.
But now you
say bollocks will go. It'll go. I can say it, bollocks, it's going to go. Nobody's going to have it in. It'll be blocked. It'll just be...
Anyway, make sure, guys, that you listen to the podcast because it's a lot of fun. It's great companionship, and you're gonna find it very entertaining. So let's just get started with all the stuff that we are going to be talking about. So we're talking about, first of all, on the artistic part, and I think this is really something very cool. I want to give a shout out to a company that is called Give a Shit, and this is I want to spell it so that we are not blocked. It's SHEET, sheet, like a sheet of toilet paper. And these guys, what they are doing is that they're doing incredible art on toilet paper squares. Look at how beautiful this is.
Amazing.
And they are auctioning it, and the money that they are actually getting, they are sending it to the NHS in the UK. So it's a very, very nice way to start in an artistic way the toilet paper diaries on the 40th episode weeks.
But it really depends on the toilet paper that you use, because if you use nice comfy toilet paper, your pencil will go straight through. I know from experience, but I won't talk about experience. But you remember at school you used to get that tracing paper that was really hard, and you could actually draw on that. You could actually drive a car over it and it wouldn't make a dent. So they're probably using really strong stuff. Just saying, that's all.
Yeah, it's very possible. So kudos to Give a Shit. Great name also. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic the work that you guys are doing. So anyway, we're talking about Renaissance, and the way that I actually like to put it. And let's just go into a little bit left brain, right brain. Normally, I like to do the right brain kind of creative. Crazy kind of thing, but I think right now I'm going to concentrate a little bit on the left brain.
The logical side.
Yeah, the logical side. And let me just share with you about, what was it, about 20 years ago, I think it must have been, I read a book that was called Only the Paranoid Survive, written by Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel in those days. Sadly, Andy Grove died recently, but I mean, this is a great book, and all the knowledge could be very easily applied to what is going on right now. I mean, right now we gone through complete standstill. So basically, in February we were all going at 70 miles an hour through the highway, and then suddenly we went and we hit a big stop sign, and everything got blocked for right now. How many days have we been now here in captivity? Let me just see here. You
can check on the list. 50.
It's actually, no, it's 51. That was 51 days.
Wow.
51 days. So anyway, coming back to my story, to being here in captivity, as I like to call it. And then right now we are all desperate. We are all with long hair. We're all upset. We are all gained weight. All sorts of things have happened. And now we have to come out and what's going to happen. So we basically have to figure out, we're going to find out that some of us are not going to have jobs anymore. Some of us are going to have to start a new career because possibly what we were doing before was not working. Suddenly we see that there's many different forces that have been just going in and out, and it's a very interesting book. And there's also several videos on YouTube that you can watch that can just explain to you a little bit more about these or Only the Paranoid Survive. But for me, the biggest and most important learning from this book is what he talks about, the inflection point. So basically, an inflection point. If you everything goes in business like a wave. So sometimes you have the top of the wave, sometimes you go to the very bottom of the wave, and it could be up and down. And the only way that you can actually take your business to the next level is when the business is at the top. You have to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and then you actually try to build on that, but making the adjustments and making the different changes that you require. Now, what is incredibly important is that you realize that right now we are exactly at that point. We are exactly at the inflection point. And if people don't really change and think that we were going to go to quote unquote normal, they're just going to go down to the bottom of the wave. However, if you understand where we are and what we need to do and how things are going to be changing, you might have the chance to actually go into the next level. Just think of it this way. I mean, this is exactly the metaphor that Andy Grove uses in Only the Paranoid Survive. And he says, if you go and start walking in the forest and you suddenly get lost in the forest, what you need to do is, before you continue walking, you have to stop and think what's going to happen. And this is how I would like to see Renaissance. This is how I would like to see this entire week. We're going to be talking about what's going to be happening after the lockdown is over. What are going to be the changes that we can expect? And we are going to culminate on Friday with our 50th episode. So this is going to be a very interesting week. So make sure that you are with us watching it.
I've never read that book. That's really fascinating. I need to take the details of it and read it for myself. And you said it's 20 years ago you read it.
Yeah.
But it's never been as important to look at those elements on that screen there as right now. Every single thing I saw on there made perfect sense for today. I was just saying I want to get a copy of the book so I can look through, because everything I saw on that list is super relevant for right now, especially the people who are in denial, who are thinking I'm okay because I was okay before. And I didn't realize that everything's pivoted and shifted, and the ground that we're on before might not even exist for when they come out of it. And hopefully they've been keeping stock of all that. But we've got so many journeys and adventures that are due to happen in the next couple of months. I think everybody should be a little bit paranoid and a little bit worried if they want to make sure that they're available to be part of the future.
This is exactly where we are, and there's how we're going to be moving through. So this is a video that was actually put together by the economists. It's a little bit long, it's about 6 minutes, but it will just tell you exactly what has happened and what has brought us into exactly this moment. I think you're going to find it very interesting. Have a look.
Around the world, people are beginning to contemplate a life after lockdown.
China appeared to have passed the worst.
Some of Spain is returning to work.
Germany is due to end social distancing measures in a week's time.
And governments are grappling with what to do next. With no way to eradicate COVID-19 and the ever-present risk of a resurgence, what's the right way to leave lockdown? Placing more than a third of the world's population under lockdown has done much to slow the spread of the new coronavirus. But there's a big price to pay.
The problem is that it's incredibly damaging to the economy, and that has real consequences for people's lives. The lockdown is really just a very intense form of social distancing, and you want to relax that as much as possible. So you want to work out which elements of the social distancing have the most effect on the disease, but the least effect on the way people lead their lives.
The trouble is, no one is certain what the right formula is. So governments will need to strike a delicate balance and take a very cautious approach to which measures they loosen, how and when. Take, for example, the tricky question of getting children back to school.
Countries like Denmark and Germany have looked at reopening schools, although under very strict conditions, which means you have a sort of social distancing within the classroom. Good luck with that.
As with other social distancing measures, making the wrong call on this could lead to a resurgence of the disease. But given the broad impact of school closures on children and their parents, and that young children in particular may not be as vulnerable to the effects of COVID-19, there is a case for trying to reopen schools sooner rather than later. China has already pioneered the use of social distancing measures within schools to enable them to reopen. So far, the country has avoided a second wave of infection, which is why there may be other lessons to learn from China's staggered return to daily life, from capping the number of people allowed in restaurants and public places, to severely limiting the number of workers that firms can have on site each day.
Social distancing isn't a binary phenomenon. The way to think of it is a series of measures, each of which does a little bit to reduce the spread of the disease at a particular inconvenience or cost to the society.
An element of trial and error is inevitable, which means governments will need to be prepared to tighten the rules again if new infections start to mount.
A second element, which helps you with all of that, is testing and contact tracing. To detect people who have the disease, identify all the people they've been in touch with, contact them, test them, put them in isolation. If any of them are infectious, then you contact the people that they are in touch with.
Tracking the virus in this way is an essential strategy if countries are to become less dependent on social distancing.
You can concentrate all that effort on the people who are most likely to have the disease. A corollary of that is that the people who you don't have to contact are freer to move around than they otherwise would be.
It's a huge task, but technology may be able to offer a shortcut.
Apple and Google are teaming up to work on technology to help reduce the spread of coronavirus.
To help deliver contact tracing to Americans and people around the world.
The idea is that when Apple and Android phones can work together and be in touch with each other, if someone's infected, you can go back over the log that shows you all the people that they've been in touch with and identify very, very rapidly, who the contacts have been, and then direct your testing to them.
Germany, Ireland and America are among the countries now building infection tracking apps that could run on Apple and Google's new protocol. Governments could use these apps to create a form of COVID-19 passport, classifying individuals by whether they've tested positive or not.
And that's a system that you've had used pretty thoroughly in China, such that people have to show their phone and show they've got a green status, which means they can travel around.
But to feel the benefits of this innovative approach, governments are going to have to really invest.
But it doesn't work unless you also have an army of testers to go around and follow up these leads, test all the people, ensure that they're keeping their quarantine.
Research suggests that America alone would need to employ another 100,000 contact tracers at a cost of around $3.6 billion.
The other thing is you need the physical tests. You need the reagents, you need all the materials, and you need them manufactured on an immense scale.
Without this, further lockdowns could become inevitable.
The less good your testing and the less good your contact tracing, the more general and harmful actually the lockdown has to be in order to create the same effect. You have a big broad net to catch the same number of infectious people. A third element is to make your health system more robust. When health systems get swamped, then the number of deaths really goes up fast. So you can invest now in equipping medics with all the protection they need, having enough ventilators, having enough ICU beds, which means that if the disease does start to pick up, the consequences are less bad.
Of course, there's the ultimate way to return to daily life.
Scientists in Oxford are hoping to have 1 million doses of a coronavirus vaccine by September.
3 vaccines are already in clinical trials, 2 in the United States, 1 in China.
There are many vaccine candidates in development.
In the year or more it may take to deliver an effective vaccine, governments should be preparing for the next challenge, producing it.
Finding the vaccine is one thing, but then you have to manufacture it at scale, and that will be really quite hard.
Part of the answer is to start building manufacturing plants now, at a cost of billions of dollars before an effective vaccine has been found. Without this investment, there will be a shortage of manufacturing capacity, and as long as there's a shortage, some countries are likely to push to the front of the queue.
There's a danger that different countries try and corner the market for their own citizens, which is understandable but not very good for the world, because it means that vulnerable populations and really key workers like healthcare workers who need protection in order to care for everybody else, they will go short.
Locating manufacturing plants across the world could help counter this vaccine nationalism and ensure the vaccine reaches those most in need. Long before there's any vaccine to be distributed, governments have more pressing calls to make on the right way to leave lockdown. With few certainties to guide them, they'll need to be nimble, versatile, and have vast reserves of patience for a return to everyday life that will be anything but business as usual.
Hi, I'm Edward Carr, The Economist Deputy Editor. It's amazing in just how a few short months the coronavirus story has come to dominate everything we do.
Very interesting. It flew past me. You said 6 or 7 minutes. I could have sat and watched that for another 10, 20 minutes because there's so much stuff in there that just really sort of, it just encapsulates. And the biggest worry that I find is literally, it's not so much about the breaking the quarantine. That worries me anyway because people are going bonkers. But it's the fact that they're not paying attention to the countries that are considered to be third world, where they haven't got anything in place. And with that not being looked after, you could end up with 1 billion people being infected because you're patching up one part of it, but you're leaving the other part just to get infected. So it's false economy unless it's right across the board.
Absolutely. This is a time for consciousness. And I think also that is very much related to Renaissance. I mean, Renaissance, it was just another height of consciousness. And whether we hit that consciousness depends on us. I mean, are we going to be the deniers? Are we going to be the ones that are going to be fighting the whole thing? Are we going to really try to understand what's going on? I mean, this is not a conspiracy. This is not something that, Bill Gates has originated because, of course, he wants to rule the world. And I mean, it's just sometimes I'm so surprised to see the balance in the people. So I tend to believe that the most important thing is actually to take the practical approach, to take the realistic approach and start getting prepared for it, because there's going to be a massive shock into opening the doors, wearing masks and start walking. And as you were saying, and I think it's a great title. Are you ready to have a logo in your mask? Because I think that's what we're going to have to start doing. I mean, we're going to have to start walking around with masks. I mean, right now, American Airlines has already mentioned that as of the 11th of May, you will have to go fly with a mask. So it will be mandatory to fly with a mask. Every flight attendant has to be using a mask. If you go to a restaurant, everybody's wearing a mask. And I mean, this is a whole new universe that we're actually entering in, and we need to be ready.
Absolutely. It's very scary, but it's the only way to move forward. And I find it fascinating that so many people are in denial, thinking it's some kind of conspiracy, like you mentioned earlier, because nothing gets fixed when that happens, apart from the fact, as Darwin has always stated, those who don't get it and those who don't adapt don't hang around because they get rid of them. So there we go. I'd like to share with you the things about creating a better future, because we're talking about the business end, and this whole week is all about Renaissance. So what I want to do is share 5 things that you have to sacrifice to create a better future when you start looking at the art side of what your business is really all about. So these are suggestions. They're opportunities for you to relocate where you are going with this. And I'm not going to talk so much about the art. I'm just going to talk about the mindset, because until you get the mindset right, you really can't move forward. So first of all, analyze other people's definition of success and then let it go. It's not about anybody else. If you really want to be successful, you have to think about what you really want. So that means that, I mean, before the lockdown, everyone wanted to be rich and famous and connected and an influencer, or not everybody. A lot of people found that to be the epitome of celebrity and success. but that's somebody else's. I mean, if you've got 1 million followers on Instagram, does that mean you're a social media success? Well, they clearly don't care about you. They just like following what you're doing. It's not the same thing. Or being on the US rich list, or even having a best-selling book. These are great ways of proving how you've gone in the food chain, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have beaten yourself in the battle against how good you can be. You're just comparing yourself to other people. So be prepared to let all that stuff go and understand that this is about your happiness. You have to create your happiness if you want to reach forward and find your own success. Second thing I want to talk about is looking good for others. So it's not just about watching what other people are doing, and it's definitely not about looking good so other people can turn around and say, wow, you've done a great thing. It's always nice to be respected. It's always nice to have people who are supporting you in your journey, but it shouldn't be the only factor. And when you study something really hard, when you become a master practitioner at anything, whether it's a martial art or it's engineering or it's computer studies or anything like that, it doesn't mean that your mastery makes you the very best person at doing it. What it does is you end up with better questions than everybody else, because you realize that you've become a student of the art that brings you right down again, but you're able to now go to a higher level with the discoveries than most people can do. So really try and master as much as you can do, but remember it's a one-person journey. Next thing I want you to look at is busyness. Everybody says, oh, he must be busy, he must be doing really well, but busy doesn't necessarily mean focused. So what you need to do is think about what your time is worth and whether you're actually doing the very best with your time. So if you're every hour of every day working really, really hard for somebody else, for instance, then that doesn't mean necessarily that you're heading in the right direction that you need to go in. It just means that you're filling all your hours and you're going to be exhausted. And the challenge with that is how much time you're going to have for reinvention and how much time you're going to have to actually look at your personal development and where you actually want to be later on. So what typically happens is you work so hard and then you flop down in front of a TV exhausted and then start the whole day again. Well, maybe what you need to do is change that flopping down in front of a TV bit to slow down during the day to be able to advance yourself by learning new skill sets and new things that will allow you to go into a different position later on. So then you can scale it. And the way to do that is to think about ultimately, what is your hourly rate? What do you get paid per hour? Because the ultimate way of gauging it is if you can be paid a certain rate per hour and other people are paid the same rate, why should they choose you? When you become a specialist at something because you're really good at doing it, your rate goes right up. So when that happens, you spend less time doing the jobs that other people can do and more time on the stuff that earns you better money, but it also means that because that better money is coming in, you've got more spare time to recreate and look at your art and look at your improvements and even have time to chill. And that leads on to point number 4, entertainment and distractions. Successful people make sure they've got plenty of free time, but they use it differently from everybody else. So it's always useful for learning skills, for being productive and for moving forward in your life. But it also means that during times like the lockdown, you haven't spent the time watching Netflix. You've had plenty of spare time, but you've used it on something that's good for you. They also do watch TV and we also do read books and we also do like listening to music, but that's because they understand that every second of every time is a choice. So using that time to chill out rather than just to flop down and switch off also has its values. And the 5th thing I want to talk about, and the last thing, is ignoring opportunities that are kind of okay, but not really where you want to be. If you've got a vision board, if you've got a roadmap, if you've got a set of goals that you truly want to hit, and you get opportunities along the way that kind of distract you and take you in a different direction from where you really want to be, ignore them. Focus on where you truly want to be, because when you get there, it will be worth it. And it's difficult. Sometimes you've got to pay bills, you've got to raise a family. And so those are challenges, but always keep your eyes on the prize. Otherwise, you'll kick yourself later on down the line that you're nowhere near where you wanted to be. And you just kind of ended up here because, well, I didn't make the right choices. So the end result and the final conclusion is this. It's you versus you. Whatever you decide to do with your life, when you reinvent yourself and you look at Renaissance, whether it's rebirth or creating your art, it all comes down to playing a higher game than everybody else. Typically, we get about 80, 90 years at this. And I hate to think that when you get to the end of it, you look back and you go, I got it all wrong. So right now, doesn't matter how much time you got left, use it differently and value your time above everybody else's.
Phenomenal. Dave, I love that. That's absolutely great advice and great information. You know what? One of the things that I also think is very important. I mean, a lot of the stuff that it doesn't matter how much we want to implement and to start doing stuff. I mean, we are not 100% in control of what's going on because, of course, we have to rely on governments. We have to rely on other people which are somehow, to a certain extent, taking decisions for us that are not 100% what we would like to be acknowledging, and that's one of the big challenges. I have here a very interesting video where you can see how Germany has been helping businesses, and it's just really very interesting that we learn from Germany. I mean, obviously, it is not our decision; it is not in our hands. But I want you to be aware, because this is the kind of thing that, especially if you're living in the first world, I mean, if you're living in Europe, if you're living in the United States, if you live in Australia, try to see how these people are handling this, because I think it's important that you're aware who's actually in power, because they're going to make a big difference whenever there is a mess. So have a look.
1 month ago, my brother found 30,000 euros in his bank account, and the money came out of nowhere. It wasn't from the lottery. It was from the German government, who was helping his business survive coronavirus. And all it took was 3 days. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how it should be. Let me explain. Early this year, COVID-19 hit Germany and everything changed. They had empty streets, a lockdown, closed businesses, and a shattered economy, just like every other country. But the Germans acted quick. So they introduced a 600 billion euros fund that is bigger than the GDP of Poland, and they didn't sit on it. Instead, they acted quick and gave the money fast. So fast that most businesses got their money in a day or two. 150,000 artists, shop owners, and small businesses in Berlin alone were paid within a week. There were no hiccups or delays, at least on the city level. And that is how my brother's business survived. In many other countries, there are two problems: coronavirus and slow governments. Coronavirus kills lives. Slow governments kill businesses. And both are terrible for the world.
The health of people versus the economy, because they are very much interlinked. You need a strong economy to have a well-equipped health system, for example, or unemployment, recession is harmful for the mental and physical health of people too. So what we need to find is the right balance.
In Italy, the government tried a similar policy, but when people applied online, the website crashed. In the US, the checks are still in the mail, and in other countries, there isn't even any aid. The world needs to learn from Germany. Why? Because they are keeping humans and businesses alive. And that is news worthy of sharing.
In my opinion, Europe, the European Union, is facing its biggest test since its foundation. Our populations are also facing a huge health challenge. All the EU member states are being affected on varying levels. We're all affected. And so it must be in everyone's interest, and it is in Germany's interest, that Europe should emerge strongly from this test.
Really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah?
I've never been interested in politics apart from just from an observer's point of view. But that decision to look after the country and throw money at the country to keep everything afloat is such a big decision to make. But it's the only one. The amount of countries that sponsored people to not sack their staff, but to give them 80% of the earnings of what all their staff were, just to keep them at home, safe. But when they come back in and they've got to reinvent their business, you've got a full quota of staff waiting to reinvent it. That keeps the company afloat and keeps the country afloat. And so it makes perfect sense to go down that route. So well done to Germany. And I worry and I fear for all the other countries that haven't quite invested in that kind of level of looking after their own companies and their own people.
Yeah, well, in France, Emmanuel Macron has implemented several similar things like they are doing in Germany. His popularity has grown tremendously. Same thing has happened in Italy. Same thing has happened in several countries. So right now, it's exactly where you will see who's actually doing a good job and who isn't. I mean, right now, for example, Mexico's a disaster. I mean, there's many different countries which the governments absolutely suck. And this is one of those things that I want you guys to be completely aware of, because this is where you can see, I mean, if the government is doing a good job, great. They need to be there and ruling the country. But if not, be aware so that whenever you have a chance, vote them out. It's absolutely critical.
Before we go into the news, a little caveat for that. If you're in a country where it's not being dealt with particularly well, ultimately what you have to do is deal with your own environment better yourself. So you have to make a bubble around you in the way that your business, your personal life, your own mental health and your emotions work. So regardless of where you are, you can still do what you need to do. Don't follow the herd in this. If the herd's not doing it the right way, to move out of it, you've got to create your own world, which is what life should be about anyway.
Absolutely. I think this is the magic of being an entrepreneur. I mean, you can create a lot of different circumstances, and this is great. And this is why, I mean, I feel very blessed about what you and I have been doing throughout these 51 days, Dave. One of the things that I read when we were getting started was was a very good idea to keep a diary of lockdown. I mean, we remember that we talked already about Anne Frank having her diary when she was in lockdown also. But also one of the things that we recommend is that you keep a diary in as soon as we start getting out. Right now, if we go back into all the episodes that we have done throughout the 50 days, Dave, I mean, we have seen all the changes. Now everything is recorded. I mean, these 50 episodes, we can basically get them, and they're testimony on the history that we have just lived. But this history is not completely written yet. I mean, we are just halfway through the whole thing. And this is important because, of course, this is going to help you develop tremendously. So I honestly recommend you to keep a journal, to keep a diary. Sorry, for all the crazy things which are happening right now, that you can write them down. And worst case, I mean, they will be interesting for your grandkids to write, but hopefully they will also give you a lot of insights on how you have been growing throughout these crazy and trial times.
Remember, your social media can be a diary as well. If you're posting every day and saying how you feel about things and what you've been through and what's happened, you don't necessarily have to keep it physically in a book. If your social media has got photos or you're just sharing your feelings, that's a good enough way to return to that, because it will keep a log of everything that you've done, and it allows you to put it in perspective. But remember to do something, post something. If you don't do it, then you'll never have a recollection of it that you can share with people. And I mean, in a year's time, 2 years' time, maybe in 10 years' time, people will look back at it and say, what was it like? And you'll say, well, it was challenging, but it was gone before you know it. But right now, you have to make those points of keeping a note that you can share so these mistakes don't get made again by people in the future.
And one of the great exercises that you can do is go over this month and try to discover some of the fun things, some of the frustrating things. For example, one thing that I will never forget is this story of my hair. It's just driving me nuts. And I think I have mentioned it about 500 times.
It's great. It's like one of those movies where you see somebody turning into a werewolf. If you were to do stop motion of your hair just growing and everything, the only thing that's missing is you need to have a beard, a big bushy beard, and at the end of a pandemic, a little squirrel pops out. That would be perfect.
That would be just perfect, yeah, indeed. But I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff. For example, I mean, let me just show you here. I mean, this was one of the. This already happened a while ago, and I've been actually dying to show this on the show. This is a father that actually promised their kids to take them to Disney. And because they couldn't go to Disney, the dad actually created the entire Disney parade in their living room. Have a look. So what?
You've really got to love your kids a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but those are things that we're gonna remember. I mean, right now that we're living in lockdown, to a certain extent, it makes me a little bit sad because I would have liked to do a lot more things. I've been really spending a lot of time working on the toilet paper diaries, and I'm very happy for it. But for example, right now I went to see the plants that my son started planting in about week 2. Right now they're already about this size, and he's really proud of them. And my daughter's been learning Spanish. So there's several things that we can definitely remember that have been anchored to our minds. So make sure that we take into consideration those things and write them down in your journal. This is another really great example of somebody which, of course, had to find a side hustle, which is something that Dave has been mentioning frequently. And look at what he has done. Have a look. Yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, the guys said, well, we can actually cook pizzas. I mean, there's no pizza restaurants open here. Let's just start doing stuff, and we can just make a little bit of money there. So I think we have gone through a very interesting time, and that's why I definitely recommend you to use a journal. You know what? Another of the things that we're going to be finding on the as soon as we come out there, and this is just also something that came from The Economist, they say that this is going to be the death of the office. I think we have been informing about this already for a while, and I think that's just a reality that we're going to be facing.
I agree. I mentioned it a couple of times. Banks are saying that 98% of their staff are staying at home, and they quite like it. So it may well be that we're all expecting the norm to go back. But it's not going to go back. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the massive office space that's been used before. I mean, that will literally have to be turned into something, but it has to be turned into something that people will want to go into. Whether everybody decides to take up paintball and walk around in these big buildings and play like that, or whatever. But I think that people are getting used to this kind of living. And I mean, after doing it for 2 months, I don't really miss it that much. I went to the shops today, went alongside a few people. But what's really strange is the inability to read people's faces when you can only see their eyes. You know that they're being friendly because you're buying stuff. But at the same time, when you've only got this bit to play with, it seems like you just want to get out of there. And I think that there'll be a revolution of masks soon, where the emphasis will be on when you want to show people your face, in which case it'll be clear, and when you don't want to show people your face, in which case you'll be able to cover up, and we'll have all sorts of logoed and comedy masks. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet that's been created that's got like big teeth on it or like vampire teeth and stuff, but that's all to come, I'm sure. If we're going to stay safe, but also start coming out of it and creating relationships. At the moment, everybody sort of avoids talking to people. I met somebody today when I was walking with dogs, and he wanted to do the elbow bump, and I didn't want to. And it's not because of the fact he had a dog and I had a dog, and there might be. I just didn't feel that I'm ready to connect and run that risk over meeting strangers. And I would never be like that before. I'll be the first person to shake hands. So it's going to take some time, I think.
We're getting some comments here. Munir Al-Busairi saying that the economy in the worst place is actually moving virtual, which I agree. We're getting some comments also saying here from Janice Fordman that women really have an issue with the hard hair, that she recently and accidentally cut off a braid. Oh my God. Don't know why my husband wants to have. I don't know what that is. Jan Roberts is saying hello. Mariana Iturbide is watching. Hello, Mariana. Long time that I haven't heard from you. Jan Roberts commenting, a new world is better than what it is right now. Abdul Karim Afun is also saying hello. So we have a ton of people saying hello. It's great, guys. I'm really happy that you are watching the show. If you're watching, make sure to show it. Share the show if you can, because as you know, we're actually providing a lot of very valuable content. Another interesting,
and we do the same thing every night, by the way. So every single night we're here at the same time sharing with you the toilet paper diaries and so on.
Yeah, Dave. Another thing which is really changing tremendously, and I think this is also something that we need to mention, is the fact that the pandemic will change the way it says the American, but I think it's the world retail forever. I mean, right now here in the States, if you go to a restaurant, it has to be spaced out. The airlines are adjusting, the shops are adjusting, the malls are adjusting. I mean, we're entering into a complete new world, and that's why writing a journal is very important. Because I mean, from what we used to see previously, right now we're seeing a complete different world.
And if you remember what happened to Blockbuster and all the video VHS renting companies, and they didn't respond to the idea of streaming or the idea that people would want to have a different way of getting access to their content, they went under. So you might well find that people make delivery the norm. Right now, your living room and your house is decorated for you to maybe only be there a couple of hours a day, because the rest of the time the whole family's going out. It'll be a completely different way of doing it when you start analyzing that might be my normal reset. That's my normal being at home. One of the things I was considering, and it's an interesting spin, is how much money did you spend on your car and how much money did you spend on your laptop? Because right now you're not going out in your car. Imagine you've taken spent twice as much on your laptop. What kind of experience would you have right now in your ability to create content and connect with people, even a bigger screen with a projector and some better speakers? I think those are the decisions people are going to start making, not from a particularly selfish point of view. They just need to be able to connect with people better. I was talking to a client this morning who wants me to motivate their team all around the world. And right now you've got tons of people, and I've mentioned it before, single, at home, been there for 2 months, slowly going crazy because all they get is the news that tells them that everybody's getting infected. They really have missed human contact, and they're just worried about even ordering food because how do we know that it's prepared by somebody safe? And so when it gets to that stage, then mental illness starts to kick in. And I think there's a lot of repairing that needs to be done before everyone feels that they're going to be back to normal again. If they ever go back to normal, because what we're really realizing now is this is the new norm.
Yeah, I agree with Jimmy Kimmel that he says that I don't like to mention the new normal. I mean, this is basically a rebirth. This is basically a renaissance. This is basically a new birth into a new era. We're actually getting into a complete new world, which we're unfamiliar with. I mean, just these kind of headlines. When could have we thought about these crazy headlines? The world is running out of space to keep oil. I mean, this is just insane. 3 months ago, we would not have even thought of having that kind of thing. Or this one here, this is also crazy. I mean, for all of those that watch Narcos and all these different series, I mean, dirty money piling up in LA as coronavirus cripples international money laundering. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at. It's an absolutely new world, and the magic is we're going to have to be exploring it. We have to explore it by ourselves. So that's why I really recommend you to have a journal, because it's like suddenly there's a new world and let's capture it, because possibly for your kids, possibly for your grandkids, that's going to be what is there. That's their world. But we actually came into a world which wasn't there, and we're just rediscovering that world. So this is a great opportunity for you to start a renaissance, a rebirth in a more artistic way, in a more profound way, and that you see it as an adventure.
And we'll be sharing lots of tips and ideas of doing that throughout this entire series this week, which is all about Renaissance. And of course, our 50th episode. And we've got some major stars joining us for the 50th episode. We can't tell you who, because it's still in contractual states. But hello to all the people who joined our watch party, by the way. Many friends from over the years. Susan Reeder, Gary Guscott, Shamila Kamte, Dennis Jays, Peter Brimson, Chris McGlade from Redcar, loads of friends. I do a watch party, by the way, every time that we broadcast every night. Join the watch party, share it, bring your friends, leave your comments. I'd love to know. And we do share them and go through them, by the way. So I'd love to have all the stuff that you're talking about. Well done to Mike as well for sending good stuff through. It's meant to be a big party, though sometimes we do get serious, but never too serious, I think.
Well, I mean, it's companionship. And this is exactly, I mean, for me, one of the things that I enjoy is having my coffee with you, Dave. And having a great conversation, and this is just something that I think it's what we need. I mean, we need that companionship. We want to be your companions in these crazy times that we're living in, and I hope that you keep on tuning in this full week, and especially on Friday. On Friday, we're having our 50th episode. It's amazing. It's just really absolutely insane. Hey, I didn't ask you, did you like our new intro for Renaissance?
Very impressive. Very impressive. You've worked very hard on that. I don't know what people's thoughts are. We're going to show it for tomorrow. So it's got lots of clips of me and thee over the years, because we've been friends for how long? I mean, we've known each other for about 25, but say 24 years, of which at least 15 years I've been your friend. The rest of the time I'm making decisions.
I was reading some comments from Tina Morgan and from Gail Thompson from the You've Been in Dubai Too Long When website in Facebook, and they were just showing some of the stuff from Alamos and from Pancho Villas and some historic times. So we have been definitely friends for a number of years.
I was talking to somebody about that this morning, and we were saying, do you remember the good old days of Dubai? When we arrived, because I arrived in Dubai in my late 20s and I was a DJ, so you can imagine how the party times were, but we didn't have social media and we didn't have mobile phones, so nobody really knew what you were getting up to. And I can't even imagine the Instagram world that people are going through now. I'm just so glad I got that out of my system. I'm an old fart, so I can just enjoy a cup of tea and a chat with a few friends. That's how boring I am. With a biscuit, maybe, if I want to really go crazy.
That is correct. Anyway, we're running out of time, and guess what? I have also a new outro, which it's just absolutely fantastic, and you should definitely follow this family. This family are incredibly gifted, and I'm sure that you're going to really have a good time watching our new outro. Have a look, and see you tomorrow, and make sure to remember that we have our 50th episode on Friday. See you tomorrow.
Stay safe.
We'll do the same thing tomorrow. Sit here on my butt and eat a churro. That seems fun. I've got 7 Zooms tomorrow. They'll say words like circle back and cash flow to everyone. All my kids wanna play all day. I'm working, and we made the same math.